Back in the fur shed. This is Trapping Today. I'm Jeremiah Wood. Thank you for listening in. Great to have you here. This is podcast episode number 225, and we're brought to you by Kaatz Brothers Lures, KAATZBROS.com. Trap smarter, work harder, enjoy the success that follows. Kaatz Bros has a full line of trapping supplies, baits, lures, books, DVDs, traps, snares, everything you need to get going on the trap line. Brought to you by onX Maps. Use your phone as a GPS on the trap line. Mark your trap locations, get landowner information, scout, and do just about everything you need to do right from your phone. Very easy with the onX apps. Go to onxmaps.com and use the code TRAP for 20% off. And finally, we're brought to you by Trapping Today Lures. And I say lures, not just Trapping Today store, because I'm going to talk about lures and lure making tonight. I think that's going to be the topic. Hey, what's up, Land Cruiser? I am on YouTube Live. So we're going to do a little combo episode here, a podcast and a YouTube live stream. Don't do that all the time. For folks that are listening in on YouTube, I have probably this is episode 225, and I think I've probably done, I don't know, 10 or 12 actually on YouTube. So sometimes I do them, sometimes I don't. As far as the YouTube live, if it's a topic that you know, I have to do a lot of prep ahead of time, and doesn't really work well with a bunch of interruptions, and I do a regular podcast. But if it's something like this, I had a topic I decided this morning when I was putting together a bunch of trapping lure that I thought I'd do a podcast on it, and I thought it worked kind of well to have the live stream going at the same time. So if folks want to talk and chime in, and that's great. So I, again, didn't announce it or anything. I just threw it up here. We're a minute in. We got 8 people on here. So you guys are pretty good. You just, you must get those notifications and get right on at 9 tuning in. So that's great. Thanks, guys. Land Cruiser, tell me how was Neil Olson's Trappers weekend? I heard from the few folks that I've talked with that were there, it sounds like it was pretty good. Sounds like it was a good time. Sorry to have missed it, but that's just kind of the way it goes. And maybe one of these years I'll get back there. So for folks we're in convention season, people are starting to think about trapping more, and it's obvious that I'm seeing it with the orders on trappingtodaystore.com. Folks are picking up lure. Folks are buying quite a few different things. The last live stream I did, there was I'd showed some tan furs and had a bunch of people buy tan furs, so that was good. I still do have those 2 Fisher pelts, so anybody that's interested in those, they're still available. Nobody has purchased them yet, so get on that if you want the opportunity to get a Fisher pelt. I'm not gonna get any more until early next year at the earliest. So yeah, just Duck. Hello. Stay in the background listening for a long time. Figured I'd say hi. Hey, what's up, Just Duck? Good to have you here. Great. Love people commenting in the live stream. So yeah, it's convention season. I guess, started early in the summer, midsummer with the Nationals in Ohio, and the state Trappers Association stuff is kind of going on right now. So Neil Olson's New England Trappers weekend was this past weekend, I guess, and it was that was a combination of the Northeast National Trappers Association as well as the traditional New England Trappers weekend that goes on there. And coming up for folks who are nearby to Maine, I'm actually going to go to the Maine Trappers Association Fall Rendezvous. That is September. I want to say it's around the 15th. I better figure that out because I'm on the schedule to be there. I think it's 16, 17, 18, or 15, 16, 17 of September. It's in Windsor, Maine. So, hey, Donnie Grover, what's up? Thanks for joining the chat. Land Cruiser says it was a good time at Neil's, so that's good. So yeah, if you do have a chance and you're within driving distance, I'd love to see you. Come on over and we'll talk trapping, and I don't know what I'm going to do for my little spiel or my portion of the demos. That's something I I'm gonna probably figure out when I get there. So anyway, oh, what else do we got? Lure, lure making. We're gonna talk about lure making. I guess it's a tough topic for me. I actually have calluses on my hands from stirring and mixing lures for hours. That's what I did kind of most of the morning this morning, and trying to get loaded up with stuff and get ready for the season. I It's interesting, Trent. When you actually sell a little bit of lure, you have to manage inventory and manage ingredients and keep everything up ahead of time, and it can be a little bit of a challenge. So, trying to get ahead of it here and making. I made almost, I bottled a whole bunch here a couple weeks ago, and now I've made a bunch more that I'm gonna have to bottle here pretty soon. So I thought I would get into the trapping lure and talk a little bit about my philosophy on lures, on trapping lure. Skunk essence for LDC Land Cruiser. Yeah, I'm always looking for skunk essence. I found a whole pile of it uh, couple months ago, and yeah, sometimes it can be hard to get. The price went way up on it for a while, and it's coming back down. But yeah, I'd love to trade skunk essence for a long distance call for sure. Um, so anyway, it's hard for me. So let's start with us in the trapping industry. Everybody listening into this and everybody that traps. We have a number of folks who are the big time lure makers, and it's a business for them. Hey, Ottercat, what's up? Good to have you here. So you've got the Paul Dobbinses, the Mark June, the Clint Locklears, Jeff Dunlaps, the Russ Carmens. You got a number of different guys that are just like, they're in the F&T catalog. They're in all the different catalogs, Cots Brothers, and they're doing this, and they're making it a business. You've probably got probably at least a couple hundred people who have lure making businesses that are much smaller businesses, and they're more local, and they might go to a couple of conventions, and they make a little bit of lure, and it may or may not be very profitable. It's more because they just love trapping, and they're into lure making, and they want to sell a little bit, maybe to help pay for the habit. It's common. It's common. A lot of us do that with the different hobbies that we have. And then you got guys that are kind of that never have sold any lure and have always experimented with it and are really good trappers, and they just are curious, and they want to know what works and what doesn't work. And so they might formulate different uh, lures and put things together, and they could be something that's just a spectacular lure that nobody has ever even seen, that the market has never seen. They just use on their own trap lines. So there's kind of like a wide, huge gamut of folks in the lure industry, and it is a very interesting business. And the reason I think that the lure business is one of the few things that has actually survived the transition into modern, uh, into modern day technology, if you will. So, and I'll give you a few examples to try to better explain this. So, back in the day, let's say when Tom Miranda was started trapping, he was on with Fur Fish and Game. He had the video series. He was selling VHS tapes, and they were flying off the shelves. That guy made tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of dollars selling those VHS tapes through Fur Fish and Game. People bought that stuff. That transitioned. VHS kind of went away. That went into DVD. But folks made DVDs, VHS tapes, DVDs, trapping videos that you could sell and you could make a profit. You could sell them for $20 to $30. Some guys are getting $40, $50 for a DVD, trapping methods. And this went on for quite a long time. That era kind of ended. The same thing with trapping books. You could sell a little 20, 32 page book on trapping secrets and techniques, and you can make 20 bucks or 10 or 15 bucks, and people bought it. As we've transitioned into the modern era, everything's online. You can go on YouTube and you can get every trapping secret that there is out there. You can watch all the trapping videos you want in order to catch whatever instruction that you're looking for. There's a few folks that have branded themselves and are really, kind of have their own niche that you are going to pay. Like Clint Locklear has a bunch of trapping videos that folks are still paying for to watch, and it's, they'll buy them and download them online and or watch them online. Folks like that there's a reputation there, and you're still going to pay for it. But for the most part, if you want to learn how to trap a coyote, you're going to go on YouTube, how to trap a coyote. You're going to get hundreds of videos pop up, and the information is there. The books, you go on Trapperman, you search trapping today, whatever, how to do this, how to do that. Go from Google, and you're going to find the information. So you don't really need to buy that stuff. So there are a few folks that still do buy that and to get that information, but for the most part, it's not a business anymore. You cannot make a living doing it. You can't even hardly make a profit doing it. That is not the case with lure. With trapping lure, people who are making trapping lure are still able to make some profit doing it. And there are a few reasons for that. Let me check out the chat here. Dan and Judith and Dan Davis started making lure for friends of the channel. Southern Castor Beaver Lure, Alpha Delta Castor Lure. Every place tested it rocks. Judith and Dan, hey Otter Cat. All right, cool. So anyway, a few things with lure. Number one, lure is very high value per unit of volume. So it's something that can be moved around, can be shipped, can be taken to conventions. It's not like trying to sell traps or something that is heavy and is expensive to ship, and there's not a lot of margin. There's a lot of value for a little bit of volume. A little bit goes a long way. With lure, you can create your own unique brand of lure, your own unique formulation, and nobody else can. It's very difficult for someone to duplicate that. So you can have a unique niche, if you will. And with lure, there is an element of secrecy around what is in the lure. You don't see the ingredients listed on the label like you would in a box of cereal or something. So with trapping lure has kind of survived the times in terms of that. The other thing with lure is a lot of people just don't want to go through the hassle and the work of making their own lure. So they just buy it from their friends or buy it from a guy they bought it from every year. All right, guys, Judith and Dan, 70 Land Cruiser. Okay, moving on. So that's kind of where we're at in the lure industry. It's one of those things that's very attractive for somebody who wants to make a little bit of money to get into lure making, because it's one of those things that you can actually still sell. And for somebody like me, that has kind of been a little bit of what has kind of nudged me in that direction of maybe selling a little bit of lure, because it's something that you can actually do and get, make a little bit of profit with. And it's one of the last things that we can actually do in the trapping industry that we can maybe pay a little bit of gas money. So anyway, that's kind of where we're at in the business. Now, where I am at personally is a little bit more challenging to get into. So my philosophy on lures is a little bit different than a lot of what you hear in the trapping industry. I think that most of the, I'm going to be careful how I say this. There's a lot of hocus pocus in the lure industry. And I believe that there are no real secrets in lure making. And that can be a very controversial statement. Um, but if you actually look at all the people who actually know how to make lure and they have a decent quality lure, you could stack them all up on a table and you could pick randomly and you're going to catch essentially the same amount of fur, in my opinion. Now there's a few lures that maybe you can more consistently catch, or maybe one might have a very tiny edge on it, but really overall, I don't think that it makes a difference. I think uh, trapping success is all about finding the animals, having something that's going to attract them. It can be something very simple, and that's it. Putting in the work, making the sets, um, and hey, what's up, Pennsylvania? Trapping and outdoors. So the struggle with that is, how do you become a lure salesman when you don't really believe that when you really believe there's a whole lot of hocus pocus. Thank you, internet veteran, super chat, $5. That is awesome. Hey, I appreciate it. I do appreciate it very much. I was just joking with my wife, um, that I about Trapper Jay. I was watching Trapper Jay's live stream from last night just for a few minutes here earlier tonight, and it's pretty amazing. I need to start taking shots because these guys are paying this guy a ton of money to watch him get drunk. But anyway, yeah, that was kind of fun to watch for all. Yote Trapper, what's up? Our cat. All right, guys, getting in the chat. Thanks for guys for tuning in. This is great. So anyway, how do I sell lure when I really think that like 90% of the actual lure selling is kind of BS? And how do I market things? Because I know that a lot of people are very successful and they do an incredibly good job at uh, differentiating their product from the others. Oh, PA Traffic and Outdoors, $5. Thank you very much. Awesome. All right. Oh, that's great. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And so folks are marketers. They're good marketers, and never really been a good marketer. That's a something I'm just not into. I'm not good at. And I can't tell you that my lure is the best lure out there because I don't believe that. And I don't believe it's a bad lure either. I don't. It may be the best lure out there, but I don't know. Um, and so Judith and Dan put out a great video using your lures on test sets. Judith, I apologize, I haven't watched that. I really don't watch much YouTube, and I would love to hear. I was going to ask you how that lure worked out for you. If you don't mind putting in the chat, what your general overall impressions of it were, that would be great. I'd appreciate that. So anyway, how does a guy that is kind of not sold on this whole idea of this magical lure and all these secrets, how does that guy actually get into lure making? Because I'll tell you right now, there is there are a series of books that if you read these books and you practice and you test things and you go back and forth, um, you will learn how to make lures very quickly and very easily. And this is the best one, Russ Carman's Musk Mystery and Misconceptions. So um, there is some information out there on lure making that you can get. There's also a lot of things that are like, ooh. Um, and so you kind of have to pull out what's valuable and what's not, and try to figure that all out. And even among lure makers, you're going to find that there's a bunch of guys that disagree with each other on this stuff, and you get them aside and you talk to them face to face, and they'll tell you that, like, yeah, I don't buy that. Or the other guy says, yeah, this guy, I don't believe in that. Or he doesn't believe that, but I know I know it's true, and this and that. So it's a really tough game, but I do think it's a lot of magic and hocus pocus. Castor lure stays where you put it. It's very attractive on raccoons also. So there's a little bit Yeah, there. I know what it is in that. So I know what it is in that you're talking about. And the funny thing is, so when I made my long distance call, so let's go back to like so lure basics to me, basics of lure of being a good lure maker is just having good quality ingredients, testing things out, understanding what goes with what, chemistry wise, and what ingredients work, what ingredients complement each other versus what ingredients don't really help each other out at all. And then just doing things consistently, using good quality ingredients and making a consistent product. It's pretty simple in my opinion. So that's the basics. Um, so how did I get into this whole thing? How did I get into lure making? So there was actually uh, a situation where I could not find a lure that worked for my particular trap line. And I'm here in northern Maine, Martin and Fisher trapping in November, a little bit of December, and we have just these wildly fluctuating conditions where we go um, from warm. You can be. I was 70 degrees checking martin traps 2 years ago. It can be down to 0 degrees or 10 below. Um, or we got wind, we got calm, we got rain moves in, we get snow, we get freeze, thaw, ice, everything. You don't know what's going to hit you that time of year. And I was just going through all this lure, and I was looking basically just like a long distance call lure, skunky type lure, like um, oh shoot, I forgot how to pronounce your name. Uh, spell it if you don't mind spelling out for me. I will pronounce it. Guy from Bethel, Alaska. Good to have you here. That's awesome to see you. Um, there's a couple other guys from Alaska. I'd love to see you on here. If you were on, that would be just great. But no no advance notice here with the live stream. So anyway, I was using stuff, your typical like your Cavens Gusto, really good high quality lure. John Chagnon's Martin lure. What I use Milligan's LDC, but the problem was the stuff was not holding up to the weather, and I put it out there, and unless I built a shelter over it to keep it from getting rained on and the freeze and thaw. Mum tuggy thought mum tuggy thluck. Yes. Thank you. It's awesome. It's awesome to have you here. I appreciate it. I don't know if you ever emailed me though. You got to send me an email, jrodwood@gmail.com, JRODWOOD at gmail.com. Um, Tuggy. Yeah. All right. Um, so I knew there was one lure that would work for those situations because I used it in Utah when I was trapping martin. There's a guy, and his name Scott Phillips maybe, and he made this lure called Magnum Martin. Yeah, I think it was called Magnum Martin. It was a grease based lure, and it just held up really well to the weather. And I had a little bit of it. I think I had a little bit I brought back to Maine, and I used it. I ran out and all that, and I was trying to buy it, and I couldn't find it. And his website was old and outdated, and I got frustrated. I said, "Okay, I got to figure out how I'm going to make this lure." And so I started experimenting, and it probably took a good 2 years. And once I started and I got hooked up at Cots Bros and I started like trying all the lure ingredients and I started learning a lot of this stuff and reading the books and watching the videos, um, I I got to the point where I was gonna make this work, and I was gonna make a good quality lure out of this whole situation, and that's how I ended up with my long distance call. And so the long distance call, and it took me, like I said, like 2 years. I tried, I don't know how many different bases I tried for this thing. And like Vaseline, I tried Vaseline and it worked great for like the first day. And you went back the next day and it was crusted over and the scent was gone and there would not disperse odor anymore. I tried lanolin, and lanolin would work great until it got below freezing, and it would get just completely solid, and it wouldn't do anything. You could not move it, hard as a rock. Um, and so I finally got the right base, and then I got, of course, the skunk is easy. The skunk essence. It took a while to actually figure out the skunk, the proportion of skunk essence to use in this lure, because that was a challenge. Um, and I will say, I want to announce this right off right now for the YouTube guys and for folks on the podcast, because for those who don't listen all the way through, um, this I the prices, trappingtodaystore.com. I've got all the lures available right now, and the prices have gone up. Inflation is just killing things. Everything, all my stuff has gone up considerably. The majority of the ingredients, the bottles, everything else, the shipping, and so prices are up. But I did provide a discount code, and let's see, it's called Lure10, LURE10. So if you type in lure 10 when you check out trappingtodaystore.com, you're going to get 10% off of all the lures, just to kind of give guys a break with the price increase. The 4 ounce lures are going to be $30 for 4 ounces, free shipping. That's shipping included. And so basically, it cost me like $6 to ship it. So 25 bucks. If I see you in person, it's going to be, that'll be 25 probably. So, um, and the other thing I did was, that Predator pack was just insanely popular last year. So I had long distance call, Predator, and Predator Plus. Those three, really good combination for the Predator trap line. And I provided those three. That would be a $90 package of lure right there, shipped. That's 75 if you buy all three of them. So you get $15 off there. So check them out, trappingtodaystore.com. Someday when I get 10,000 subscribers, I can connect my YouTube to my store, to my Shopify store, so you guys can just buy right through YouTube, through the YouTube videos. But right now we're going to have to type it in. Sorry, type it in, trappingtodaystore.com, and check those lures out. So limited time, lure 10, LURE number 10. I got that up for the next 10 days, I believe. So check that out and buy some lure while you have the chance. Okay, so where was I with the long distance call? Yes, so skunk essence. So trying to figure out, like, skunk essence is expensive. It's very expensive, and I'm using pure quill, not cut with anything, not no, not tinctured or anything, just pure quill skunk essence in here. Very strong, very expensive. Internet veteran. I judge lures like baseball bats. If I feel confident with it, it'll work for me. Not scientific, but confidence. You're absolutely right, internet veteran. Thank you for the $5. I really appreciate that. Okay, so because of that comment, I'm going to pin a link at the top of the chat. How do I do that? I'm not a pro here. Okay, somebody might have to give me a quick tutorial on how to pin a link to the chat. Do I type it in here and then do something with it? Let me try. Sorry for folks listening to this podcast later. Okay, I'm gonna type the comment. Oh yeah, look at that. Now I pinned it. It's pinned. All right, sweet, awesome. Um, okay, and I'm also gonna pin promo code for 10% off. Thank you. Okay, so internet veteran, I got to get back to you for that comment. So I, I I'm gonna go off. And by the way, there's 25, 26 folks on here. Give a little more thumbs up. I'd like to see a few more of the thumbs up. That'd be great to help more people find this video. Mr. Carmen's Canine Call, number one commercial lure, several government studies. Yes, I absolutely have seen that. Seldom fails. What's up? Seldom was one of the guys that tested some of my lure too. So and it was great to have feedback from you as well. So I just a quick little story, a little side tangent. I was in Montana. I was a biologist there for 5 years, and I I got into fishing. Guys I worked with just were really good fishermen. One of my closest guys that I worked with fished for about 100 days a year, And I thought that was incredibly impressive. 100 days out of 365, he was out fishing. He worked full time. Well, his buddy fished 200 days a year. He was a full time fishing guide. And on his days off from guiding, he fished. But this guy is probably, in my opinion, he's probably one of the best fly fishing guides in Montana. And his most common saying was fish with confidence, fish it with confidence. And a lot of times what he would say is he'd be out there guiding a sport. I call them sports. Hey, thanks for the thumbs up, guys. Appreciate it. um, and guy would be out there casting to a run where there's full of trout, and he's not catching anything. So he goes over to Andy, this guy, and he gives him his thing, and he has says once apparently when you're guiding, when you're on a guided trip, you don't have to tie your own flies on. So he'd give that over to him and say, tie me another fly on. And a lot of the time, Andy would cut that fly off and he'd tie the same fly back on the line. And the guy would go back out and he'd have that confidence like he had a new fly that was going to work, and he'd fish hard and he'd pay attention and he'd see the strike and he'd catch fish. And so really having the internet better, that was an excellent comment. Just having the confidence is, I think, more important than whatever lure that you have in your hands. So that is an excellent point, and that goes right to my personal philosophy. So anyway, one of the things about quantities, figuring out quantities. So this lure, there are 7 ingredients plus the base. The long distance call, which is my most popular selling lure. I think the name sells it because people think, oh man, if I use this, I'm going to be able to get animals from further away. Hey, Iowa Trapper, what's up? You are the Thousand Coon guy, that right? I've seen a few of your videos. I'm incredibly impressed by you. I appreciate you listening in. Okay, so yeah, yes, yeah, good deal. All right, it seldom's got a YouTube channel. See, my problem is I put up videos, but I don't watch them. I don't watch other people. I apologize for that. But anyway, um, I'm gonna just give you a quick little story on this. And I don't mind if you guys get a bunch of stuff going on in the chat and I can't keep up with it. I'll just keep going and have you in the background. So um, there's 6, 7 different ingredients in this, including the skunk essence. And I think it's a very popular lure because people think it's going to be easier. I'm going to get animals from a longer distance because it's a long distance call, right? And that's really not. I'm going to get into that. If I don't know if we'll have time tonight, but that's kind of really counterproductive in a lot of ways because I know a lot of guys in Alaska won't even use skunk. They don't even have skunks in Alaska, as far as I know, at least not in the interior. And it's kind of sometimes some people use it and have luck with it, but some people it's just such a foreign odor that it doesn't really do much for them. So I think in a lot of cases, folks are using this, and they're using it when it's 50 degrees out, and animals are coming in and stopping way before they even get to the set because the scent is so strong. And you're really just overpowering it. And I've had several people, podcast listeners, that have talked to me and said, well, not with my lures, but with other lures, and said I had this issue and that issue. And a lot of times the issue is you're just using a little too much lure. So you got to understand how much to use. And at the same time, you want the lure, you want someone to have value in what they buy. If they're buying 4 ounces of this for now, it's $30 shipped. You want to have to pack a lot of punch so that if they want to use just a little bit, they can use a little bit, but it's going to go a long way. You don't want to be, I guess, cheaping out on people, whatever. So I developed this independent of anything else that was on the market, and I used what worked, and I tried to put the best quality ingredients at the right proportions. And this is an interesting lure, so I'm going to talk about it in a little bit. But first, I want to say I have to comment on this because I talked about the overall trapping industry. And I'm not going to mention who it is, but I'm just going to tell you, I gained a little bit of confidence here because I had this lure, and I don't know, at that point, I don't know how many I'd sold, but it was, it was pretty minor, pretty small number of sales. And I I was wondering how that stacked up, but I never really used a lot of other lures. At least with skunk, because I've got long distance call. Why do I need to use other folks' long distance call lures or their skunky lures? But I bought a guy out, had a bunch of trapping supplies for sale, and I I I purchased everything as a big lot. I wanted the traps, and I got the traps, but I had a bunch of stretchers and all kinds of other stuff, and with it came a big selection of lures. And it was obvious he'd just gone through the F&T catalog and got the most popular stuff that was there. And so I had this long distance call lure that I've never used, but it is, and I'm not going to tell you the name. It's probably it's one of the top 3 long distance call lures in the trapping industry. And I was gonna put it up. I put all the rest of the lures up on eBay and sold them, just to because I didn't really need them. I kept a few actually, but this one I just kept looking at on my shelf, looking at it, like, oh geez, I really want to see what's in there. I want to see what it smells like. And so finally, I opened it up and I gave it a good whiff, and I gave it a good more whiff, and I kept sniffing it, and uh, it was it was probably it was less than half of the potency of this lure. And so that kind of gave me a little more confidence that, okay, because everybody was saying, oh, this stuff it'll explode, it'll blow you away, it's so strong, so powerful, long distance, everything. And it wasn't really all that spectacular. So it gave me a little more confidence that there's a lot of punch packed into here. So let's go back. I'm going to catch up on the chat here. uh, Yeah, guys talking about skunks. Seldom's coyotes love skunk. Herbs and spices. Hey, right on. That's a good way to go. Little goes a long way, Judith and Dan. Yes, absolutely. Especially if the weather's a little warmer. When the weather's cooler, I find that I like to use a little more. It's Jay's live. Too loud, too early. Yep, absolutely. Iowa Trapper. You got to be careful early rolling it. I've never had that, because with this lure, I recommend folks always put it up above the set if you can. A lot of your videos, I've got Savvy Canine, been a big help. Seldom. So Iowa Trapper says everybody thinks new is always better. A lot of old traps lures that still perform great don't always need the newest best thing. Right. Hey Nathan, what's up? Nathan Lafort, stoked I caught you. Yeah, that is great to have you on here, man. Yeah, just ship some lure. Did you get your lure yet, Nathan? He does some Martin and Fisher trapping there in New York, and I'm looking forward to hearing how. I was thinking about something with you, Nathan. Though I got to tell you, and that is right along the lines with what we're getting at right now. So you got the long distance call and you got Predator Plus. But I would say that, and I almost thought about switching. So I almost thought about switching out on you, but I really, if it was me, I would go with Predator, because I was thinking, maybe you might find that you're a little over on the skunk. And so Predator Plus it doesn't have as much skunk essence as long distance call, but it does have a pretty strong skunk odor. And Predator, it's the one that Seldom Fails has used, is everything that Predator Plus is without the skunk. And this has a lot of calling power. And what I found is I've been very successful using this for Martin and Fisher. um, and so what I'll do is I'll do a little bit of skunk above the set, and I'll put this in the box where I'm trapping with those Lynx exclusion devices. And I find that it is extremely successful. So this lure has a lot going on. It's a very complex lure. It's probably more complex than it needed to be honest with you. But it's got a food base. It's got it's pretty heavy with mink glands, so it's a very strong gland component from mustelids, and mink glands are popular for any species, really, of any predator. It has beaver oil sacs are part of the base, and you've got you just there's a number of different ingredients here that are very attractive. But when you got skunk, you got to be careful with it because um, yeah, okay, so Seldom Fail says skunk gives lift to the other lure ingredients. Yes, that is correct. So the thing with skunk essence is it's very volatile. It's light. It disperses very quickly in the air. And so when you put a lure out there, um, and it's got skunk essence in it, it's gonna just explode and it's gonna go. It's gonna drift for a long ways. The problem with volatile odors is that they disperse quickly, and so over time they become much far less attractive, far less. You just can't smell them. The odor's gone, and so if you have you have other ingredients with the skunk essence. I know a lot of guys just mix skunk essence with Vaseline and they'll get their lure, and that's kind of what I wanted to avoid because I wanted to have a couple of things going on. But first, I didn't want the skunk essence to just go away in a few days and then have not really much there that's left. But I also wanted to have say the skunk essence attracts an animal to the set. I want a little bit of something else in the lure that's going to interest that animal rather than just skunk. And I think that probably gets us to circle back into the whole skunk idea and using skunk essence. Um, I got my skunk essence I trapped last year still in my freezer. Is that how you store it? You do not need to store it in the freezer, but it's a good idea if you want to keep the scent down. The skunk essence is not going to go bad or anything. It's just a matter of the only really issues with storing it is trying to figure out how to keep it from bothering everything else. And so the first thing, never store it in plastic because it will corrode. It'll melt plastic. um, it will corrode a lot of stuff. You want to have a good metal lid on whatever jar, probably a glass jar with metal lid, and then you put tape around that. You probably put that in a larger container with a bunch of dirt to keep the scent out. Cover that container, put tape around that. When I ship all my lure, I vacuum seal it. Anything long distance call and Predator Plus get vacuum sealed. So when it arrives, the U.S. Postal Service doesn't have a clue that there's something there. Because when I started selling trapping lures, I learned very quickly. I had a couple of orders that got sidelined by the Postal Service, thinking there was something fishy going on, and it was the skunk that was leaking out a little bit. You can smell my first shed. Yeah. Autocat, my mailman hates my guts. Yeah. Well, if I promise you, Nathan can attest to this, and most other anybody else that's ordered my lures can attest to this. That it is vacuum sealed, and the vacuum bag was never in the fur shed, and you will not smell it. It's very odor controlled if you buy lures from me. But I bought so many lures that I've had issues that shows up at the post office and on the weekend, and they call me and say you need to come get this immediately. It's stinking up the whole post office. They do not like it. Land Cruiser waxes the top of the jar. Absolutely, that a lot of people have done that, and that really helps. Separate the wax out of the essence. No, he's talking. If I'm reading you right, Judith and Dan, he's talking about dipping the outside of the jar into wax and letting that cool and so as soon as you take it's not going to touch any of the essence. PA trapping, I leave the mustard in my essence. Yep. Rocks on Nathan. Yeah, thanks. I appreciate that. Okay, so a skunk. One guy pointed this out to me at some point, and it really was really was an eye opener for me. Fat the pure quell, Judith. Yeah. So I don't know about you guys, but for me, all the skunk essence I use, the mustard is separated. I just use the straight stuff. Okay, so um, the maybe I don't know if I fully describe this whole idea of skunk essence and volatility properly. So I I guess the thing that I don't like about it is I kind of want a lure. I want a lure that's going to last a long time at the set. And the skunk essence alone is nice. And it does, you're right, it does carry those other ingredients along with it. But it does go away. And for I've kind of figured out. I've had several people that have bought my long distance call and have said that it lasts longer than anything they've ever used before. And I think that's part of the whole idea of the grease base. For some reason, it's waterproof, um, but it doesn't seal up like something like Vaseline. It doesn't crust over like that does. And so it allows dispersal of that lure for a long period of time pretty consistently. And it's not like if you just pour liquid skunk onto a base or onto some cotton or sheep wool or whatever, that's going to go. Whew. But for some reason, the grease just seems to disperse it um, pr- over a pretty good steady period of time. But no matter what, the skunk essence is going to need to be refreshed at a set. I mean, you know, 7 days maybe, depending on your weather and what you're looking for. Maybe 5 days for some people, maybe 10 days or 2 weeks for others, other situations. But you're gonna have to refresh it. Either you're gonna add new lure, or maybe you're gonna go over and you take the glob of lure that's above your set, and you kind of take a little stick and stir it around and kind of expose more of it and get the odors moving a little more. But um, I think skunk. I think we need to think a little bit more about skunk. I'm gonna stop into the chat here a little bit. Good to know. Try essence and castor and sack oil is a long call. That is at PA. That is a really good idea. It's a real good idea. Um, Good for cats. Already just castor and castor mix. So beaver castor is pretty much the best lure ingredient that you can find. Unfortunately, it's incredibly expensive. Um, and I do have some beaver castor lure that I'll talk about later on. But let's talk skunk. So skunk essence has been in where I'm at. It's like the go-to. Absolutely, skunk. Anybody that's martin trapping, they got skunk, and basically we joke about it because you can just drive around with your windows down on your pickup in the woods out here, and if someone else is trapping, you're gonna know it. You're gonna smell their sets. So it's pretty consistent. So what does that mean? One of the things a guy commented to me a few years back that really got me starting to think, and he said, "You're putting skunk at every set, maybe a quarter mile apart. So every quarter mile, this animal is smelling skunk. At some point, doesn't that skunk really start to get old? Um, don't you think they might want a little something different? The whole novelty of skunk essence, is that going to wear off? You're going to have an animal, fisher. I've seen fisher travel 5 miles straight down a road without getting off, and they smell skunk, they go into a spot, they go into another spot, they go into another spot. At some point, does that skunk smell just is it something they just brush off because it's nothing new? It could be that every time they go to skunk, there's food, so they're trained to go get at it, maybe. But um, I don't know. I've thought about that quite a lot, and to be honest with you guys, I have over the last couple of years, I have started um, using a lot less skunk, and I have until things get really cold. When things get really cold here in December, and we get a bunch of snow on the ground, and you just can't get odors to disperse. I'll put skunk at almost every set at some point. But early in the season, the last 2 years, I've used very little skunk essence. I haven't used my long distance call in a lot of those sets. I've just relied on skunk free lures, and I've had just as good or better success. And so I think we need to be just kind of second guessing ourselves a little bit on, is this one ingredient going to be everything that's going to solve our problems? Maybe we got to step back a little bit. And the other thing to think about is if you're trapping in an area where you have competition and other trappers, and they're using skunk too, how do you differentiate yourself and your lure to get that animal to go to your set instead of the other guys? So things to think about. Seldom fails. You think maybe it's the base that skims over and seals off the skunk? Well, yeah, that was when I was using Vaseline when I was first trying this lure. The Vaseline sealed off the skunk for sure. And the base that I'm using now absolutely is much better with that. So anyway, that was kind of how I got into the whole long distance call thing, and that was the only lure that I had for a very long time was this long distance call, and I sold it, and I don't know, I didn't sell much, but I sold it every year for a few years, and it was very popular. And I started kind of branching out a little bit. And so I've never really developed a lure that I didn't have a direct need for. And so, you know, a lot of you look at most lure makers and they have a whole line of every species has a specific lure for this species, that species. And that's really, if you're a good salesperson, that's the way to do it, because people say, I want to go trap raccoon this year. I need a raccoon lure. Go to this guy, this popular name lure maker, got a raccoon lure, boom, sold. I feel that there are so many lures that work for so many different species that it's really hard to say this is a specific species lure. And that's why that's why Predator is just named Predator lure, because I had guys from all over the country test this, and this this was very, very effective on coyotes, fox, bobcat, martin, fisher, all of the predator species out there. I don't know if anybody tested on mink necessarily, but all the land predators. I mean, this thing was just dynamite. And so I just, I could take an ingredient, make a little different here and a little different there, and make 6 different ones of these and have one for each species. It's just not, I'm not really into it. So anyway, that is with, that is the reason that I have a limited selection of different lures. So I got long distance call. We talked about that. The other thing that I was looking for when I was martin fisher trapping was early season long distance call. Didn't really cut it. A lot of times I was using like beaver meat, or I've started using fish, which the guys up in Alaska really got me into, and that is a little well kept secret because nobody else up here seems to think that fish works for martin and fisher. It's awesome. It works really good. I promise. If you've seen my videos, you've seen that I've had better success with fish the last 3 years than I've had with anything else. But beaver meat, fish, whatever bait I had, it just wasn't doing the trick. And so I know that those mustelids this time of year, early season, when it's still warm, they're not really hungry. They're not really looking for meat. They're not really looking for fat, which beavers are fatty meat. When it gets cold, they just go after it like crazy. Fish really oily. If you have a really oily fish, work great in cold weather. But these animals are feeding on nuts and berries for a martin. You'd be surprised. I opened all kinds of martin stomachs for a few years, and it's amazing how much they were eating that was not voles and mice and rabbits or squirrels. They were eating a lot of berries and a lot of beech nuts here. So I thought, well, what am I gotta do something to imitate more of a fruit or a mast type of food to try to get those animals in early in the season when they're not really interested in meat. Skunk's not going to do anything for them. And so that's when I came up with this lure, Sweetness. And this is kind of like a change up lure. So I've used it early on in the season. and it is a mixture of strawberry oil, anise, and honey. And with the grease waterproof base works really good. And so that was my whole intention of it. And I sold it as that, as just kind of an early season Martin and Fisher lure, and probably attractive to other critters. Then I started getting all kinds of feedback, like, man, I'm using this for raccoons and DPs, and it's working great, and all this. And so folks have used this for all kinds of other situations. But that's kind of how I ended up with that lure. The next lure, so Predator, it's a Predator Plus, and so that was so we go into the long distance call. This was a lure that was really loud with skunk, but it also had a bunch of different musks in order to add increased attraction at close range. And what I noticed actually was that when the skunk essence wore away and that volatile skunk kind of moved out, you go up to that lure and you could still smell all of the different other ingredients that were still attractive to animals. And so that was pretty exciting about that. But the fact is, this is a bunch of essential oils with skunk and a grease base, but it didn't really have the gland component, and that's something that I felt that I was missing with a lot of my trapping. Um, the thing that really uh, the thing that really stood out for me was I was I was using I was having a lot of issues. So for folks that aren't familiar with Maine trapping, we had uh, incredibly draconian regulations placed upon us because of Canada Lynx becoming listed as threatened under the Endangered Species Act, and we are no longer allowed to use body grip traps um, anywhere on land unless they're inside this box, this Lynx exclusion device. And so the box, your trap is 18 inches minimum from an opening. The opening is typically going to be 4 inches by 4 inches. And there are other designs, but trust me, for folks that aren't familiar, it's complex and it's difficult. And basically, a lot of people call them Fisher exclusion devices because they exclude a lot of Fisher and in some cases exclude Martin. So what I was finding was animals were coming in, they were smelling the long distance call. They're smelling this from the road. So I trap a lot of logging roads and I go off 50, 75, 100 feet from the road, make my set, and they would be traveling along the road. You watch the tracks, and they just, as soon as they hit where the our northwest wind is typically predominant wind pattern and prevailing wind, and they would hit that and they'd stop. They turn instantly and go straight to the set. It's like, oh geez, my this lure is working, right? So they'd get to the set and they'd kind of stop and they'd see the box and the bait was in the box, and they'd circle the box. Sometimes they go on top of the box. They look in the box. They go to the back of the box, which they couldn't get to because they had to go through the opening on the other side. And I just had a heck of a time getting animals to go in that box. And so um, I was trying to I was racking my brain trying to figure out what I can do in order to get those animals to go in that box, especially when they're not that hungry. What I did notice, if a storm is coming or if we had some super cold weather, they'd just suck it up and they'd figure it out and get in the box and get caught. But I was missing, a lot of animals that were coming to the set that were not getting caught. If I had a foothold in front of the box, I'd have caught them. But you have to check that every 24 hours, and I'm 50 miles from home in a lot of those sets. So I started using glands from the martin and fisher that I caught, and a few weasels, and kind of blending them up and mixing them with some Tonquin musk and putting them in the box inside of the box while I had my long distance call up above the box. And all of a sudden, animals started going in the box. And so my theory was that there was, in addition to just like the hunger uh, attractant, there was a little bit of, oh, something else has been here. I'm really curious about that. I want to figure that out. I'm going to go in that box. Whatever it was, it worked. And so I started looking at different formulations where I can include gland as a major component, mustela gland as a major component. And as you can imagine, the very first thing I ran into was you can't make a lure in production with Martin and Fisher glands. They're just very hard to come by, and you can't. They don't add up very quickly. And so I was able to get mink glands at a very large quantities, and very consistently. So that worked pretty well. Um, if folks have Martin glands, I save all mine and I still use them. And if you want to trade me some Martin glands, I'll use them for my own trapping. I really think they're very effective. But anyway, I started developing this lure, and I looked at a lure you want. I think I mentioned this earlier, but you want ingredients of lure to complement each other, and not just kind of duplicate each other. And so, uh, it one example that I might talk about it. We're running pretty long here. We're over an hour, but I may talk about it in a little bit. But um, just understanding kind of what ingredients go together well, what to use as the base, like some guys mentioned before, a base can be pretty important. There's guys like Russ Carman says that a base needs to be a calling agent in itself, or it's useless. And I don't necessarily agree with that, but I can see where he's coming from, and I certainly respect that view. But anyway, I was able to create a lure where um, the base was indeed a very attractive food element. That's not fish oil, like a lot of the bases are, and a lot of stuff is not meat, like a lot of the bases are. It's a very unique base, and is a very attractive base for a number of different predators. This is going back to the whole thing. I'm not a good bull BSer, not a good marketer, and I was starting off. I said, I'm going to share all my ingredients for all my lures and how to make them with everybody. I don't care. I started doing that, and a couple of things happened. One, guys were start calling me out on stuff on YouTube, and it was it was unbelievable. Um, everybody had decided that because I shared all of what was in my lures, that they were going to provide an opinion on how they worked, even if they didn't have any experience with them. And the other thing was, it just didn't seem to have that appeal that it had when I started saying, "Well, I've got this lure. I'm just not going to tell you what's in it, but it's really good." And all of a sudden, a bunch of people buy it, and people love it, and it works great. And so, my goal here is to get the lure in your hands so that you can catch fur with it, and it works for you, and you can use it with confidence. And so I'm trying to figure out a way to put on my magical sorcerer hat and say, "Hey, look, man, I'm not going to tell you what's in here, but it's really good, and it's a unique lure, and I can't tell you it's a secret because nothing's really a secret." But anyway, this is kind of a small secret because you're not going to know what's in this lure. But the base is really attractive. It's a food attractant. It's very unique. It is uh, it is fermented to a certain point and then stopped and preserved in sodium benzoate in order to get just the right smell, just the right calling power. Um, the other large element to it um, adds additional attractant. It's a very universal attractor. Um, there is the mink glands that are in here. That is a very large component of this, and a number of other several other musks and essential oils. Put it that way. But anyway, I made this up, and I started using it, and it started working, and it worked just as well. It seemed, the sample size with the martin glands was pretty small because I ran out of martin glands, but it seemed to work just as well. And so I started sending it to guys all over the country, and I announced it on the podcast, and people got in touch with me to test it, and I got a bunch of feedback, and um, that was really encouraging. I decided, okay, this is working. I'm going to put it on the market. So I started selling it in addition to my long distance call. Um, but the thing is, when I initially formulated this, I had skunk essence, and I really felt that it didn't need skunk essence in order to do what it was doing. There's another ingredient here that also holds and disperses odors quite well, um, and that it is not quite as volatile. But um, so I decided, I the Predator Plus I was using very effectively in cold weather, but I decided I wanted to have a separate lure that didn't have the skunk in it, and that's why I developed uh, a line of each. I have Predator and Predator Plus. One has the skunk essence, one doesn't. That's the only difference in those two lures. That's it. Still, the Predator Plus outsells Predator 2 to 1. Um, I think guys are just loving the skunk and they're sold on the skunk. But everybody that has bought Predator has been happy with it. So as far as I know, so far. And so I know that works, and I'm kind of trying to push guys a little bit more towards, buy the Predator and then maybe get a little skunk essence, maybe put a few drops on it when it's cold. Um, but really, I mean, this is a really good lure by itself. And if you're trapping early in the season, I really think you're doing yourself a disservice by adding skunk to this. That's my opinion. Okay. Um, let's see. There's a few guys on the chat going through talking about somebody's lure. I don't know who that is. 15 PA trapping, 15, 20 sets of casters, froze, 10 4-ounce jars. Yep, blended caster is hard to beat. Seldom fails says that's why folks need to test the lures they buy in order to make any decision. Yes, that's a pretty good policy. Just buy a lure and then test it out yourself. And I think give it a good test. Don't just I don't think just one spot, one dirt hole or whatever. I try it at a few different conditions. Get a little better sample size if you have time for it, because I think it's if you go out and just so happens that the coyote, maybe there's a yearling coyote that's right next to your area that you set up that test lure, and it's there that day, and you come back the next day and oh man, it's all dug up and everything looks great. Maybe that animal would have dug just about anything up. Or maybe you set that out and there's nothing in that area, or there's just the conditions, the wind is a certain direction, that animal walked just past it and didn't even smell it. So I think you do have to try to get a pretty good sample size and use multiple test sites in order to test the lure. But I think it's a great idea to test lure that you buy just to make sure that it's going to work for you. One of the things that I don't have the book in front of me right now, but Charles Dobbins wrote a book called Testing. Something about testing baits and lures. I can't remember the exact title, but I read that book and that was pretty eye opening because he was a very experienced trapper, and he talked about experiencing cases where a particular lure would work really well for one person in an area, and then another person just you know maybe 50 miles away, it didn't work at all. And so it's really important for you to make sure that in your particular situation that is going to work. The other important thing is to change things up. Don't use the same lure all the time, every set, like I think we mentioned before. Okay, and finally, this I got several other lures. Anyway, I got Muskrat Magnet, and that is just a muskrat lure. I think like 90% of the muskrats you trap, you probably don't need any lure at all. I've hardly used lure for muskrat trapping, but I wanted to try some out, and it's attractive to muskrats. It works. I think you could probably put toothpaste on a little pile of mud and grass, and you catch muskrats really easy. So don't think that is just anything special. But I can guarantee you that everybody else's muskrat lure on the market is nothing special either. It's just a mixture of some of these things. So anyway, one of the things like with muskrat lure. So my thoughts on a balanced lure, making a balanced lure, making lure with ingredients that complement each other. So when I put together this muskrat lure, I decided I was going to try to make a well balanced lure, and so I included. And this is something I learned from Kellen Kotz from Kotz Brothers Lures, who has a ton of experience with this. But he said, you know, you want to have um, for muskrats in particular, but for any species, think about this in just in broad terms for lure making. You want to have these different ingredients that complement each other. For muskrats, I'm thinking I wanted to have a musky type of scent, similar to like muskrat glands, a sweet scent, and a mint or minty scent. Those are things like like sweet and sour, things that complement each other, things that go together well. And so the musk on there is ambret musk. It's very similar to muskrat glands. The ag um, and the mint is spearmint. So there you go. You got my secret ingredients. I'm not going to tell you not going to tell you much about anything else. Good waterproof base on it, and I won't tell you the proportions of each that I use because that is the magical secret. But anyway, that's Muskrat Magnet. Um, Nathan Lafort says, kept Gusto in my dorm room so my nose hardly detects skunk anymore. Do you go heavy on skunk? That adds to the confidence. Hey, you're absolutely right, Nathan. You're absolutely right. And yeah, I think another trick is just put that LDC out ahead of time in some places, and that hopefully if you come back a couple weeks later, you'll still have the predator, scent there. I don't know. I don't know what I'm talking about. It's getting late. Um, Sack oil versus beaver tail oil. Um, so okay, seldom good. That's a good one. So in my experience in beaver beaver sack oil, beaver sack oil is a very consistent attractant to all predators. Um, it is it's good. I mean, I find it to be extremely attractive. Um, I'm not sure exactly why. It's probably the same reason that beaver castor is probably the best attractant out there. Beaver tail oil is like this. It works in some cases, and in some cases it doesn't. Um, it can elicit a really strong digging response at dirt holes, but it can also cause animals to kind of just get on it once and figure out what it is and never come back. And I don't know why. Uh, I can't explain it, but that's probably the reason that lure makers are always looking for oil sacks. As far as beaver tail oil, I mean, I've got guys say that they've caught beaver with beaver tail oil, which is just doesn't seem right. It's not. I mean, it's not. It doesn't smell anything like oil sacks, sack oil, or a castor or anything like that. So, but you can catch anything on beaver tail oil. I think Oscar Kronk's lures. I smelled a lot of seemed like beaver tail oil on a lot of that. I use beaver tail oil as part of a formulation in one of my lures. I do think that um, it helps kind of hold odors together and keep them calling for a longer period of time. But beaver tail oil in itself, um, you need to test it. That's seldom fails. Perfect example of needing to test, because I know so many people that some people swear by beaver tail oil, and they use it very consistently. It's awesome. And I know other people who've tried it once and will never use it again. So yeah. PA, never tried making muskrat lure. I really trapped them much, but I did grow some mint this year. There you go. Ottercat sack oil is top of the list, in my opinion. Judith and Dan, I heard of people catching beaver on Vic Salve. Yeah, that's the I think that's the mint side of things. Uh, PA, I think sack oil's in a lot of beaver lure, floats on the water like oil. Yeah, that could be that could be it. But there's a lot of things like poplar bud oil does the same thing. That'll just kind of disperse off this on the surface of the water. Okay, so finally, this Birch River beaver lure. Um, so this is something that I developed for beaver trapping, but it's heavily castor based. Should I share the ingredients in this? Probably not. I gotta be this magic magician and have a bunch of secrets and potions. So anyway, there are a few ingredients. This is very simple, but beaver castor is just hard to beat. And so this thing has it has an ingredient that helps to kind of spike up the castor a little bit and make it more. God, I have a hard time explaining this, but put it this way: this ingredient you put. Um, okay, so I mix. So there's a couple of other ingredients in this lure, and I put one of them. I'll put one of them in with the castor, and I'll mix it up. And you smell and you smell. And I do this a lot. I add a little bit and I smell and I add a little bit and smell. And as this other ingredient, it smells like nothing almost, in my opinion. A lot of people say it smells like this, smells like that. To me, I get very little smell out of it. And I started testing it out on different things, and I got it from Cotsboro's. I thought, what is the attraction of this? It doesn't do anything. I don't understand. I mix that in with the other ingredients, and it just pops. It's just a totally different odor, and I'm not sure why, but I can see why people use it, right? It actually it helps, and I'm not saying you could take ground caster and you do 95% as well, but this might give a little more 5% or so. So anyway, yeah, this this does have a little bit of lithium grease in it to kind of help keep the water down. Uh, this is a fascinating lure because I tested it out. One of the things that Charles Dobbins talks about is to test the calling power of lures is putting it out, um, say out in the weather, and you put a lure, put one this day, put one this day, put one this day, and just kind of see how long they last. This thing was like 2 weeks, and I was still walking by it and didn't even have to get close to it, and I could still smell it. And it was just steady, just a steady output of scent. And rain and wind and dry, it just did not knock it down. So this has been a really good lure. It's an excellent beaver lure. It's very well, it's $30. It was more expensive. I bumped up the price of some of the others because everything's out of control. But 30, I think you're getting a pretty good deal for what I pay for the ingredients in it. Uh, but this is not just a beaver lure. This is a case where Birch River, this could be used. There's a little bit of a beaver food attractant to it. Well, not a little bit. There's quite a bit, but that's not going to deter predators from this lure. And you're going to catch bobcats, lynx with this lure. It's a good change up for coyote, fox. I use it with martin. I catch martin and fisher with this. I get tired of using the same thing, and I'll put a little bit of this on. And or when I'm making a bunch and I have extra empty cans, and I clean up with paper towels and I put the paper towels in a container, and I'll put those out in my trap line. It works. It works really, really good. It's just you can't go wrong with beaver caster, and there's a few added things in here that help it even more. Another quick thing for you guys that are martin trapping, and is probably, yeah, it works for fisher too. Early season, a little bit of perfume at the set works great, and a little quick little spray with. I use the cheap version of Chanel number 5, and that works awesome. I have another little lure that I've been, well, it's a very tried and true, and I may actually or sell a little bit of it, but it's basically the same idea. It's more of a musky early season lure that work really well for martin. So anyway, that's that. I'm going to check the chat really quick and then I'm going to end this. Thank you guys for tuning in. Thanks for the thumbs up. People sticking around. Thanks for all the really productive comments and thank you for the super chats, man. That is awesome. I really appreciate it. Don't forget to check out the trappingtodaystore.com. Up at the top of the comments, use that code LURE10 for 10% off. That's good till the 10th of September. So you got a week and a half or so to get that done. But I'd get on it right now because prices are up. That's one of the things I didn't talk about. Um, my my base ingredient for a lot of these lures is up by 50%. The jars are up by like 30%. A lot of the ingredients, some of the ingredients have stayed the same, but a lot of them are up. A lot of them ran out of stock, and I was worried I wasn't going to get any. That's kind of getting better now. Shipping is up. Everything is just out of control with inflation. And I need to replace these supplies when I sell the lures. I need to be able to get ingredients back in stock. And so the price is up, and I apologize for that, but it's I think you're getting a good product for what you're paying. And if you get that Predator pack, you're going to save a lot of money there. Save the 10% off, and remember, on some of this lure, a little bit goes a long way in a lot of cases. So thank you guys. Let's check the chat here. Ottercat says curiosity is a killer. Great stuff there, Judith and Dan. Canadian beaver casters. Oh, you want to get into the northern versus southern caster? Maybe we should do that. I don't want to get into that. I don't want to get into that. Great first night catch lure. Heard that. There are different opinions. There are different opinions on the effectiveness of northern versus southern caster. It seems like everybody believes that in the north it doesn't matter, but in the south, some people believe that northern caster is not as attractive to southern beavers, or they shy away from it, or they're afraid of it. I don't really understand what's going on. I've talked when I started seeing a lot of that. I started asking questions to a lot of people, kind of behind the scenes, and that's not the universal belief. There's a lot of different conflicting opinions on that. So I certainly think there's a different smell based on when those animals' diets, depending on what those beavers are eating, different places. Our beaver feed on a lot of aspen. Obviously, in the south, you're not going to have that. You're going to have a much different diet, and you could expect maybe the caster smell a little different. I personally think when you blend it all up together, you're not going to notice. But anyway, that's my thoughts. I hope this was somewhat useful and give you a little idea about lure making, and maybe what's going on in my head, why I'm making lures, and how I'm making lures and all that stuff. So anyway, thank you very much. Thanks, Yo Trapper. Appreciate that. And we will be back with another episode on a different topic next week. I don't know if I'll be on YouTube, but we'll see. Thanks again for everybody tuning in here, and thanks for folks listening into the podcast. Don't forget to support our sponsors, Cots Bros and Onyx Maps and Trapping Today Store. Until next time, guys, keep on talking trapping, keep on thinking trapping. We'll catch you on the next episode.